Going back to you being a serial entrepreneur, I remember in one of your past clips, you talked about the gap and how it's where most people give up when they're starting things like this.
Yeah.
What keeps you going and prevents you from like giving up?
Sure. So that's based on a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. So a lot of these ideas I'm just sort of regurgitating for some of these guys, right?
Hmm.
I don't claim to be the smartest person in the room every single time. In fact, I want to be humble enough to realize that a lot of people know more than me, but that's an idea worth sharing, right?
Hmm.
So that book's really good. So basically he just looked at all these different industries, right? And he said, you know what? The best flavor of ice cream overall in sales ever is vanilla. Nothing else comes close. Like it's like 6 times more profitable to sell vanilla than chocolate, right? But having the other flavors, lots of people like the different flavors, but vanilla is the best. So being the best in an industry, right, is more important than having a product that's okay. Because the best, you're going to get 6 times, 10 times, whatever amount. I don't remember the actual stats from the book, revenue for your business, for example. So he says basically every industry has a barrier to entry. That's what we call the dip. It's when people quit because it gets hard or it's impossible because of the resources that you currently have at that time, right? If you're trying to break into the sports clothing apparel market, you're competing with Nike and Adidas and all these massive billion-dollar companies, right? If you're trying to break into the iPhone market, you're competing with iPhone, right? Or Apple, you're competing with Apple, you're competing with Android, these megalith, huge companies, right? And so the idea is that dip is so steep that there's only a few companies that can have the resources to eventually get into the market where they'll have enough people buying their services to make money from it, right? So the idea is that, okay, well, what industry do you enjoy that you like that lines up with your purpose that's also got a dip that you can enter that has exponential growth, right? So at the end. So how can you later on, like 20 years from now, are you going to still be able to grow in that industry? Or no, is that not going to ever happen? And so the idea is you find a career, you find a job, you find a business that you start or whatever, that when you get past the dip, there's a small enough percentage on the other side that there's a big enough opportunity for you to win. And if you can find something where you could be the best at in that niche market or whatever it is, if you can be the best, you go and do that.
So is that what keeps you motivated though? Is knowing that you can consistently do that and then become the best?
Yeah, what motivates me is that in high schools across the country, there's a problem. And the problem is kids graduate and then 88% of them hate their jobs their entire life.
Hmm.
There's a lot of organizations that help people find jobs, but there's not a lot of organizations that help people figure out their purpose. And so after researching and like getting feedback from, the audience, it's like, this is a needed thing. I was like doing a ton of research on how to make this channel. And by no means am I the best YouTuber ever, that's got Mr. Beast on, name all over it. But, when I was doing research and researching how to do research, there's not a lot of YouTube content with lots of views on like humbleness in service when I was searching, different ideas like that. And so, yeah, that's a place where I think I have a very unique perspective that's somewhat, pretty controversial, but it's a needed voice that needs to be heard because there's a lot of people that could, I believe that if we were helping kids figuring out their purpose earlier and how to help people more, we could really make a huge change in the world in a really positive way that helps people, self-actualize and be happier. It's not a utopia. It's like, you got to go get it. You got to go make stuff happen. The whole point of that dip is like, that's when most people quit. It gets so hard, most people quit. That's an industry you want to be in. When it's so hard that most people quit, that's something that most people don't have, right? Which means now your skill set's valuable, your mindset, your knowledge, valuable,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And
a good way to
that's
put
the
it.
point, right? If you can figure it out, other people don't want to. Because, like in our David Goggins episode, when you get to the edge of your talent, right, you stop trying to learn the thing because it's hard. I don't want to do that. Let me pay someone to do it. Well, there you go. There's a job. Figure out what they're willing to pay you for. Go learn that skill, especially if it's something you like.
That's a good way to put it. And that kind of even correlates with when you get out of college and how you can find an industry that you like. You
Yeah,
find a skill that you enjoy and then you go find somewhere you can potentially make money doing it.
exactly. So the dip, right? So there's probably only almost no one who goes and does door-to-door sales anymore because it's like the hardest thing probably that you could do. And I did it in college. It's the hardest way to sell for sure. But if you can do it, you'll never go hungry. People will hire you left and right because of the sales ability that you'll develop, and I believe doing it in an ethical way. I think there's some companies out there that do it in a not very ethical way. It's more about the money, but I worked at this one company where, you'd go into a town that you've never been to, no leads, and you would literally cold call, but then you would turn the town into a town of people who knew you, who you were, and you would know every family like in that town, and you would sell really, really well, and just most people aren't able to do that. And so that's a valuable skill that people are willing to pay for. They want to know how you did it, right?
Is
So
that like a small town kind of thing?
yeah. Well, you start in a small town and you build up into a larger town, larger cities. And so when you're building a business, people start too broad. So if you're really broad, you're not going to talk to anybody. So you've got to go to a place where people are going to start knowing about it and start talking about it word of mouth. So like for all my speeches for the podcast right now, I'm just going to the University of Tennessee, or I'm doing like a professional speech because, you know, at the University of Tennessee, those are my ideal students. I'm right next door. I want to help the clubs there. My club's there. Well, it's really the students club, but the club, you know, that I'm sponsoring, that being a part of and helping get off the ground for this mission of helping young people master their purpose. You know, that's where if all those students start talking, it'll get to other campuses. If it's me going to every campus, it'll never get anywhere.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.